Is it fair for me to say that the Coen Brothers are a bit of an acquired taste? I mention this because, in my experience, a lot of the people that I've talked to about the Coen Brothers that say that they actually enjoy their work tend to be hardcore cinephiles. Now, speaking as someone who enjoys a number of their films, not all, because I haven't seen them all, I have to say, this film needed some more time in the edit bay. Hail Caesar is a 2-hour homage to the days of old Hollywood, the Red Scare, and lavish musical numbers. But the biggest problem here is that there are a lot of dead scenes. These are scenes where nothing happens to really further the story. It just felt like there were a bunch of scenes that the Coen brothers wanted to shoot, and so they threw together a script around those scenes just so they could shoot them. It all feels really self-indulgent as a result, and I don't mean the self-indulgent in the sense of, oh, look at us, we're artistic filmmakers, but more in the case of, they're obviously doing this just because they thought it would be a fun scene to shoot, but didn't actually think of how it would fit into a story. And really, that's a lot of the complaints I have are leveled against their musical numbers because, well, those are the dead scenes. I mean, with the amount of musical numbers they have in this film, they should have just made a full-on musical. That's something I've been noticing with Hollywood films lately, where they'll have these musical numbers, but then they basically are almost embarrassed to have them. So really, if they wanted to do all these musical numbers, they should have just made a frickin' musical. I get that the days of old Hollywood were days of extravagance, of ambitious production numbers, despite being hampered by the production code, but they didn't need to dedicate these 3-minute-long stretches of nothing to illustrate that. This leads me to my next problem with this movie, the too many subplots. I mean, there's a lot of scenes and subplots that could have been cut from the film because they don't add anything to the story proper, nor do they actually add to our understanding of the main characters involved. I mean, I understand they're trying to establish that, yeah, the main character played by Josh Brolin is a fixer. His job is to basically keep the scandals out of the papers and keep the stars looking good to the public. I get that. And we have enough moments that demonstrate that in the story proper, that we don't need a lot of this excess fluff. And I get, they're trying to establish that in old Hollywood, they had control over the actors' images. But again, we have enough scenes that illustrate that we don't need a lot of the excess fluff around that. When it comes to the story itself, while it has an interesting concept, it meanders. That's the best way to describe it. It meanders, and even when the main story is wrapped up, it's done so in a way that just feels too convenient and in some aspects way out of left field. Almost kind of like they didn't know how to wrap up the story after they threw it together so they could shoot all those fun scenes and had to think of something on the fly. That's really how it feels. I mean, I understand they're trying to tie it into the whole Red Scare and the HUAC hearings and stuff like that, but all of those aspects felt a lot like an afterthought, really. Visually, the film has a unique look. It has a nice mix of pastels and bright colors to kind of emphasize the facade that Hollywood was putting on for the public, while the more underhanded dealings take on a very dark, muddy tone. That said, it feels like the Coen brothers were trying way too hard to copy Wes Anderson, right down to a lot of the homages to old school filmmaking techniques, and even right down to having Ralph Fiennes. Overall, while this film has its interesting moments, it feels bloated. I mean, it just feels like it's jam-packed with so many ideas and scenes that the Coen brothers just so desperately wanted to make, that they kind of lost sight of what kind of story they were trying to tell. As an old Hollywood caper, it fails because it meanders too much within its own story. And as a satire of old Hollywood, it fails because it tries to comment on so many different things with such broad strokes. As such, as someone who's a fan of the Coen brothers, this is definitely not one of their best, and there were a lot of moments and ideas that should have been left on the cutting room floor. All of that said, Hail Caesar gets a 2.5 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.